Okay, so this afternoon session is about authoring your own questions that will only last about 15 to 20 minutes because I want to make sure that it's very short and to the point and get all the information that you need. And every month we are offering these topic webinars that you can sign up for. And at the end of the webinar today, when you exit, you're going to have a 2-question survey. If you have a minute to answer the 2 questions, that would be very helpful for us because we'd like to know what kinds of future webinars you'd be interested in. Because even if we offer one for a day and time that you cannot attend, you can still register for that webinar and you'll receive a link to the recording and everything afterwards anyway. So you can still benefit from the information. So we want to make sure that we're offering webinars that are informative and what you'd want to know about on the site. So today is about authoring your own questions, and we're going to go through a few basic questions first, and then we'll do the live demo on the site. So the first question is, where can you add your own questions? And there's 2 places on the site where you can go to input your own question. You can enter your own questions when creating a benchmark. In step 3, called favorites, that's where you have that option. And again, we'll go through exactly what that looks like. And even on your homepage, you have a favorites tab. It's over here on the far right, and you can add questions there. And the favorites tab is helpful because if you have a bunch of questions that you have time to go ahead and add that day, but you're not quite ready to build a benchmark with them, you can go to your favorites tab and just add them. And that way they're going to be saved for you so that when you build a benchmark in the future, you can just choose those questions. They'll already be in the system and for you ready to go. So those are the 2 places where you can add questions. And then as far as where you can use your own questions, right now the one and only place where you can use questions of your own is a benchmark. It doesn't matter whether you have created what we consider a basic or custom benchmark. You may know that when you create a benchmark in step 2, where you pick your questions, you can choose either basic or custom. So it doesn't matter what you've chosen there. You're still going to have the option to add questions of your own. And in the past, we always required that you choose at least 5 USA Test Prep questions in step 2. However, we just removed that minimum. So you could actually go to step 2 and you don't have to add any of USA Test Prep questions if you don't want to, or you could add 1 or 2 and then continue to step 3 to add your own. So that is a fairly recent change that we just made. Now, as far as what types of questions you can author, we have 2 choices, multiple choice and free response. Multiple choice is what we've always had, but free response is fairly recent, just in the past month or so, and we've added that. So when you add your own question, we do have certain requirements. If it's multiple choice, you have to obviously input your question, your 4 answer choices, the correct answer, and an explanation for students. The explanation is required. You know, you can be as thorough as you want with the explanation, but because we always provide an explanation on the site for our own USA Test Prep questions, that's just something that we ask the teachers to insert as well. If it's a free response question that you're adding, the only thing you have to input is the question itself. Nothing else is required. We do have some additional fields that you can enter or use. For example, you can upload an image. So if you have your own picture that you'd like to use, you can certainly upload it. You can even base one of your questions with our passages. So if we have a passage in our system that you like and want to write a question about, you're able to do that. You can also add a prompt if you have your own passage or reference you want to add in there. You can do that. If it's free response, we do have the option to add an answer key and keywords. Those are not required, but the benefit of typing in at least your keywords is that any of those keywords found in the student answer will be bolded. So when you go back to grade the student's answer, it's going to be easier to find the words and the terms that they should have used in their response. And then the big question is, what does USA Test Prep do with your question? We do not take that question and use it in our own database. It's just for your own use, so it stays in your account only. Like I said, it's not stored in our database. Oh, sorry, let me go here. It's not even accessible by other teachers at your school. So if you author a question, another teacher in your department is not going to see the question in their favorites. The one exception to that is if you have added your own question on a shared benchmark, then any teacher who assigns the shared benchmark, they will see that question in there as part of the benchmark, but it still stays strictly in your account as far as being able to edit or duplicate or even delete that question. Whenever you add your own question, the audio files are automatically created, so you'll have audio for your question and your answer choices. We also have Spanish translation available for all questions, including your own. If it's a benchmark, however, that is a setting that you control, whether you want students to even have the option for Spanish, and I can show where that is. And then your questions are saved until you decide to delete them. So we do not go through and delete out questions that are, a certain length and how long they've been created. They just stay in your account, and then you can decide when you no longer need them. So that's the basic information about favorite questions or questions of your own. And so now I want to go ahead and get logged in as a teacher to show what some of this looks like on the live site. So here I'm logged in as a teacher. Whether you teach elementary, middle, or high, the process is the same, regardless of what content area you teach. So again, the first place that you could add your own question is here on your home page in the Favorites tab. So again, if you just had time to go ahead and add a bunch of questions, this would be a good place to do it. All you have to do is click Create New Question, and you'll choose your content area and your standard that you're writing the question for. Then in step 2, this is where you decide if you want to write multiple choice or a free response, and we'll go ahead and do multiple choice first. Here you have your option to upload an image. So you'll just choose exactly where that file is saved on your computer and upload it. We do have some maximum sizes here, but most standard images, should be just fine. We do have a note that if you upload your own image, it does take 5 minutes for it to replicate across all of our servers. And so if you were to create a question with an image and then save your benchmark and really quickly have a student go in and take that benchmark in less than 5 minutes, there's a chance that the question may not have that image properly saved. So just make sure you wait at least 5 minutes after you add and upload the question to have students take that benchmark. Here's where you can add a passage, but again, it has to be a passage in our system. And right now, I chose a math content area. I'm in Algebra 1, so it's telling me that there's no passages. So only if you're working in an English content area that is passage-based, you'll have a list of passages there to choose from. Then you can add in a prompt of your own if you'd like to. So if you had your own passage, this is where you could insert it. And we do have HTML formatting if you want to, just make it look nicer and bold or italicized. You can use that. And then you have the question itself. And we're going to make a very basic question here. And then you have your answer choices. And you'll choose the correct answer. And then again, provide your explanation. And once that looks good, click to review question. Oh, it tells me I must choose an image. Let me uncheck that. Kind of go back and review. And so here I can see my question, and it looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and submit. And so now it tells me it's been created. So when I close out, here's the question that I just created here, and I can click to preview it, and I'll see the question. I can actually listen to the question and the answer audio if I want to. And then I could go in and make any changes. I could edit. If I had similar questions, I can duplicate it and just use that as a shell or a template for other questions. So now let's go through free response. It's very similar. It just has a few differences. Okay, so again, choose my content area, choose my standard, and this time I'm going to switch to free response. You have your same image, passage, prompt options, and then you ask the question. Okay, then the answer key again is optional. If you wanted to add any kind of rubric or tips for yourself when grading the question, you can do that. Students see the answer key at any point, so it's really up to you how you want to use that. But what I would recommend using are the keywords. So just type in one per line. It doesn't have to be one word, but it could be, a phrase. So that way when the student types in their answer and you go in to grade it, any of the keywords that you have entered in here are going to be bolded. And that will just help you search for what you're looking for a little bit easier. So then I'm going to click to review the question. And if it's free response, it's going to show blank for the answer. That's perfectly fine. You can just disregard that because obviously there's no answer pre-filled in there. And you'll click to submit, and now it has been created. So there on your favorites tab, you'll see this where you can switch back and forth between the type. So if I click to view free response, I can now see my free response questions, and this is what it would look like for the student. Well, they'll have to type in their answer, and they do have more options with the text and an actual editor when they type in that question or type in their answer. The one thing to note on our site about the free response questions, if you choose to add them, is that they're not automatically graded, so you will have to go back and grade those yourself. But again, at least it's easier that all of your student answers are online and you can have those keywords already found in their answer. So now I've added a couple questions, and let's say the next day I'm ready to build a benchmark. So I'm going to come here and click to create new benchmark and give this benchmark a title. Okay, then I'm going to choose my content area. And you have some different settings for a benchmark. The one I wanted to point out is this one, the Spanish option. If you choose yes for this, it does not automatically translate the benchmark into Spanish. It will just give students the option whether they want to view that benchmark in English or Spanish. So it will not, set everybody's benchmark into Spanish. So you don't have to be concerned about that. And I'm going to go ahead and continue. Step 2, this is where you can choose some questions of your own. So if I pick custom, I can go in and actually pick USA Test Prep questions, and this is where in the past we had that minimum of 5 questions that you had to choose. But if I don't want any USA Test Prep questions, that's fine. You can just continue to step 3, which is called favorites, and this is where you can add your own questions. And another thing that you'll see here are USA Test Prep questions that you have starred as favorites. In different places on the site, such as if you're working with our bell ringer or a benchmark in the past that you're looking through, all of our questions have a little star under them. So if you really like that question, you can add it to your favorite, so it's very easy to find. So here I can see I do have a USA Test Prep question, and then here's the one that I just added. Notice you do have that same multiple choice and free response that you have to switch back and forth between the two. So I can just add the question that I added already. If I have another question I want to add here, I can go through that same process by clicking on the Author a New Question button. One note about using a free response question on the site on a benchmark is that when you click to add it, you're going to decide how many points you want it to be worth. By default, all of the questions in step 2 or even your own questions are worth 1 point. So just keep that in mind. Our default is 10 points for a free response question. So it's going to be weighted as 10 questions. You may want to, adjust that. I may only want it to be worth 3 questions or 5 questions. So just keep that in mind when you're adding free response. And I'm going to add this one. And I'm just going to go through steps 4 and 5 and get to step 6. And you'll see that this question has an apple to let me know that that's one of my questions. So for any of your own questions, you'll see that. The students will not, so they will have no idea. But for you, you'll see that. And by default, on a benchmark, your questions are going to be added to the bottom here. But a lot of teachers for a benchmark choose the random order option. So in that case, they're going to be all over the place when students take the benchmark. They're not going to be in a set order. And let me go back to step 1, which is the settings. This is to display questions in a random order. Again, a lot of teachers choose yes for that, just because with the benchmark, all students have the same questions. So if they're taking the benchmark, in a computer lab setting, it's a good idea to not have the same order for everybody. So in that case, even though your favorite questions or your teacher questions will show up at the bottom, they're really going to be distributed all over the place when students go to take it. And then you can save, and then students will take the benchmark just like normal. And the great thing about being able to use questions of your own in a benchmark is that you will benefit from our benchmark results. So you'll have an item analysis for all of your questions to see a breakdown for how the students did. So you'll get a lot of great data afterwards by using your own questions on a benchmark. And let me make sure I didn't forget anything, since we're at about 20 minutes, and I want to make sure I covered all the information before anyone has to log off. If you ever need to delete a question, you obviously have the pink X to get rid of it if you no longer need it. And just be careful and make sure that you truly don't need it anymore in case there's a shared benchmark with that question that other teachers are still using, because that would mess up their benchmark results if you were to delete it. So I think that's all the information that I wanted to go over as far as showing how to add your own questions and where to do that. I'm going to stick around for a little bit and see what questions everybody has, but feel free to log off if you need to go, and I will send a link to the recording and a link to the presentation at the beginning so that you have that information. And thanks so much for joining, and have a great rest of your afternoon. And I'm going to open it up now to questions. Again, you can type those in your control panel, and I'll be sure I read through each one.